The bagpipes mean only one thing and one thing only here in the studios in the inner sunset of San Francisco. It's time for DERFCAST number 56. I want to introduce my security guard, Max the Cat, the engineer, Pipes the Cat, and the other cat that watches over him, Cleo the Cat. I'm trying to think of a job for her, but whatever. All right, you can listen to all our past DERFCasts at SoundCloud.com, and we're on iTunes under Ralph Tycho's Comfortably Zoned Network, but just type in DERFCast, all caps, into iTunes, DERFCAST, and you'll find us. I'd like to thank last week's guest, the original Sheik's manager, or one of them, towards the end of his career, Supermouth Dave Drayson. Pipes, turn it off. Now, that's what you get when you have a cat as an engineer. Nothing works. All right. And enough of last week's guest. Thanks again, Dave. I want to bring in this week's guest. We got a treat, or I've got a treat. We all got a treat. I'm kind of nervous because I always kind of mark out with my guests. And, yeah, we'll get back to being normal. This man has been around the block more than once in wrestling. He's wrestled for All Pro Wrestling, XPW Wrestling, Incredibly Strange Wrestling, Smoky Mountain Wrestling. He's written a book called Extremely Strange that I've read, and it's a great book because it's not just 350 pages, it's not 400 pages, it's over 600 pages. Let's welcome to the show, J.R. Benson. Jeff, are you there?
I'm here. Great intro. Thank you very much.
Well, I hope so. I'm a little nervous, because
with all these cats here, I'll bring Cracker Snow Bunny next time. So.
There you go. And he's the owner of a great cat named Cracker Snow Bunny, and you could follow Jeff on the internet at Facebook under Jeff Benson. Jeff, thank you so much for coming on.
No problem, no problem. It's a long time putting this together, so I'm glad I'm here.
Yeah, and I'm glad you're healthy and everything's going good and you're back to being normal. You had a little health scare, I take it.
Yeah, that was unfortunate. It came out of nowhere, but took a turn for the better. This is the best I've felt in a couple of years now.
That's great. That's great. Well, I first saw you in Incredibly Strange Wrestling, and it's hard to explain. Vandal Drummond was with you. And,
right.
I've had him on the show a couple times. He's a sweet guy. And
great guy. One of the nicest guys I ever met in the business, actually.
His stories of Dr. Jerry Graham are amazing.
Yeah, definitely.
Definitely. Tell me how you got started in wrestling real quick.
Well, actually I got trained by Roland Alexander up in Hayward. And we went up there just to rent his ring because we were doing backyard wrestling, and we wanted to just bring it out into a real ring. So we went there just to rent the ring, and he saw our repertoire, and he actually invited us to come to his camp. So I went to his camp in, I want to say 92, could be 93, actually. I was in the same class with Spike Dudley and Steve Rosano.
Gotcha. Two great wrestlers.
Trained by Rick Thompson and Michael Modis. So and that was how we broke in. And then Roland was real old school at the time. And eventually he broke loose a little bit, but at the time he didn't want a whole lot of outlandishness or anything hardcore. So I kind of drifted away from him and found my way into the Incredibly Strange stuff and took off from there, that's for sure. So.
Oh, you sure did. I mean, you've been in the ring with who's who. You've done everything from managing, little bit of booking, building gimmicks. I mean, your book, Extremely Strange, tells it all. I mean,
yeah. Took me forever to write that thing. Hardest thing I ever did, but I'm glad I did it.
Oh, it's an excellent read. Now, how can people get that real quick? And we'll promote it through the show. I mean,
the easiest way to get it is through the publisher, which is lulu.com. That's Lulu. You can also get it on iTunes. It's still available on Amazon UK, but I don't think you can get it on Amazon in the U.S. anymore. If somebody wants to contact me on Facebook, though, they can get it directly from me as well. So.
Yeah, under Jeff Benson, easy to spell both ways.
Right.
Now, you were Incredibly Strange Wrestling, Extremely Strange Wrestling, and then you gravitated to Smoky Mountain Wrestling going across country in a great road trip. It's in the book.
But yeah, we went a couple times before the Incredibly Strange. We sent our backyard tape just for the heck of it to see what Cornette would say about the interviews, and he got a big kick out of it. Cornette and Candido, Tammy, Tom Pritchard, they watched it at a barbecue apparently and just had a blast with it. So we ended up flying out for some of their conventions, and became like a yearly thing. They would let me and Stacy manage on various shows during the conventions, and Ron Head would do ring announcing. And so finally we actually moved out there for about a year.
Right.
Tennessee, got some work down there, and great times down there. You know, I mean, I watched Cornette growing up, so getting to work with them was incredible. So.
I bet. I bet. What? Tell me a memory of Smoky Mountain Wrestling. Just anything that I say Smoky Mountain Wrestling, you say back to me.
Smoky Mountain. Oh wow, God, so much. You know, well, the memory that stands out the most that people can also get on videotape is the Dairy Queen massacre. I don't know if you've seen that.
Yes.
Where they screwed up Jim Cornette's food when he was starving, and he went ballistic and tried to climb through the drive-through window. That was pretty. Chris Jericho taped it from the back seat. So we were all in the same van. That was great. But as far as the wrestling product itself, I mean, it really stood out at the time because, you know, the two national promotions were on their asses. I mean, this was a couple of years before ECW.
Right.
Brought some creativity back, so there was nothing going on anywhere. Smoky Mountain went back to old school, but did it really well, and it was just an incredible promotion, and they really made a run of it, too. So.
Oh, yeah. Oh, God, the Gangsters, that's where they were first paying, got to, God, why am I so nervous? I'm not talking right.
Nuts because, I mean, you know, in the big cities, you know, like Knoxville and Johnson City, it was pretty ordinary, you know, folks, but spot shows during the week, you would drive hours deep into Kentucky, and you're literally going into Klan territory out in these places. And then here comes New Jack and Mustafa doing their gimmick, and that was just wild. I mean, I thought they were going to get shot at one of those shows, but they were fearless. So.
Oh my God, yes.
They got a break too, both of them. Well, Mustafa had been around for a while, but that was New Jack's start right there.
So to switch gears and we'll go back to Smoky Mountain. I first saw you on the internet on a chat room or page for Roy Shire's Big Time Wrestling, and that's where my love for wrestling started. What was your first angle? What was the first angle from Roy Shire that you remember? The very first one.
The very first, the way I started watching wrestling, I was really young. I mean, I was about 6 years old, and I just happened to be turning the channels, and I remember I saw Pat Patterson and the Masked Invader. And Pat Patterson had him, you know, straddling the post and kept ramming his leg into the post till he broke his leg was the angle. At least that's how I remember it. I was pretty young, but I was just stunned by what I was seeing, and, you know, I had no idea what this was. So from that point on, I mean, I never missed the show till it went off the air. And, you know, the first big feud with Pat Patterson, Mr. Fuji, that was a pretty big deal. But for me, the biggest angle for me that really got me hooked was when Bob Roop gave Kevin Sullivan's father the shoulder breaker.
Oh, at the Cow Palace.
Yeah. I saw that on television and it just blew my mind. And I made my parents take me to that show because I had to see the snap Sullivan and Roop because of what he did to his dad. And it was just an incredible angle for me at the time, and just I was hooked. So I went to the next live show. It was my first show ever, actually. So Sullivan and Roop.
Yeah, you know, it's always gone back and forth between people in the know and that that watch, or what? How should I say it? Here in the Bay Area with us marking out about Roy Shires, who was Sullivan's father?
I actually asked Kevin Sullivan down in Smoky Mountain, and he told me that was his real dad.
I'm not
sure if he was working me or not, but he claimed that was his real dad who did that angle. Now, I know they did that angle in other territories.
Yes,
though, so
yes.
I don't know if they used the same guy every time, because I never saw it done anywhere else. I heard it was done.
Yeah, so. And I think in Florida and Atlanta, or Florida and some other place, but Florida for sure, because, you know, Shire's brought...
maybe like in Knoxville or something like that, I think. And I'm not sure how it did for business everywhere else, but I'd like to see the angle to see if they used the same guy. But maybe it was his real dad. That's what he claims, so I'm not sure about that.
I'd love to see it, you know, or read about it or whatever. But, you know, as another guest on my past shows, Alan Bolte, the ring announcer, he actually brought it up to me that I didn't realize. I went into boot camp in the Coast Guard and missed that whole part of Roy Shires, but it popped the territory for a while. It drew like eight.
I mean, you know, it was my first show I ever went to at the Cow Palace, but it was a big crowd there, and it was a hot crowd, and especially for the main event. There was a lot of heat for that match, and the feud dragged on a while because the second show I ever went to was almost a year later, and it was again Sullivan and Roop in the main event in a cage match. So
right. Right.
They dragged it out for a while, but the crowd wasn't any smaller that time, so those were pretty good-sized crowds there, and they were really heated crowds, and television was great. It was all built around that angle for a while. So
Yeah. Well,
I think Roop was booking that, right?
Yeah, Roop was booking it, and he booked himself as the Star Warrior, I think after a Loser Leave Town match or something like that. And so that got a couple main events at the Cow Palace, and they hot-shotted a lot of different things that Shires didn't do. But rumor has it, I mean, it's all in Rock Rim's book, 100 Years of Northern California Professional Wrestling, that Roop tried to take the territory over, and so Shires fired him. I don't know if you know anything about that. That's just what I've heard. Because I haven't read the book yet.
He left with a lot of people. Like,
okay.
Crew, I think, went with Roop.
Gotcha.
And I would imagine it was something like that. And Roop, everybody put him over. Even Ray Stevens put him over in a match. So
right.
So, it was a big deal. And yeah, Roop, you can always tell when Roop books, he always does some variation on that mask gimmick. I saw his stuff down in Kentucky with Poffo, ICW. Same thing, all built around the different masks and unmasking, and there's double masks. And he's actually a pretty good booker, Roop. So
yeah, he is, and a shooter too from the old days. I mean, I'm sure you've seen that tape of Eddie Graham tells him to get in this ring with a wannabe wrestler, and he actually breaks the guy's arm. It's on YouTube.
Yeah, he was a hell of a shooter. I mean, I guess, was he an Olympic wrestler? I know he was an amateur big time. I don't think he was in the Olympics, but I think he was just a national champion or something. But
well, I remember.
Definitely a shooter.
Maybe bring back a memory. Did Hank Renner announce him as an alternate for the Olympics? That's kind of coming back to me. I don't remember, but
I think so, because I know he wasn't in the Olympics, but
right.
for some reason the term Olympic was with him. So I think that may have been it. Yeah.
So let's reminisce. So after for me, I had gotten out of the Coast Guard right when I got kicked out for smoking pot next to the USS Enterprise on the pier with a bunch of other sailors. And I was 19 at the time, so I was in a year and a half. I went in when I was 17. My mom signed the papers for me to go in. Anyway, long story short, I had gotten back, and Roop and Sullivan guys were gone, and ICW tapes were being shown. And it was the Macho Man and Orton Jr., just
Ronnie Garvin,
right,
Roop.
Ronnie Garvin, Roop, and Rip Rogers. Yeah, they didn't come to the Cow Palace. So then, after that, it was, and hopefully you'll agree with me, Bob Geigel's guys came in.
Yeah.
It was so bad, Jeff. Oh, my God. It was my first live match, and Bulldog Bob Brown has to be the worst wrestler I've ever seen in my life.
Yes. I actually almost quit watching wrestling, and I was so addicted at the time. Like, anything they put on, I'd watch. I was a couple weeks away from just quitting with the Kansas City shit. I mean, Rufus R. Jones and Bulldog Bob Brown, it was just horrible. Just the shit.
Just so bad. And then they showed a couple tapes of Leah Maivia's promotion.
Yeah, those are pretty interesting.
Right.
I don't think they ever came out, did they?
I don't think so. And then Blackjack Mulligan and Dick Murdoch came. They were on TV for maybe 2 or 3 shows, and they came to San Jose for 2 shows, I was told.
Yeah, they definitely ran in San Jose. I didn't go to either of those. The one I went to was when Florida came out.
No, at the Cow Palace, and Dusty Rhodes was the last U.S. champion.
Right, and I saw Dusty Rhodes and Ole Anderson at the Cow Palace, which was great to me. The crowd was real small. So
yeah, I was there.
Unfortunately, I can compare it to the last Shire show I went to, headlined by Buddy Rhodes, and it was a pretty, decent crowd, down from Sullivan Roop days. But,
right.
Oh, my God, the entire, there was nobody sitting up in the upper deck. Most of the ringside was even open for the Florida show, which was a bummer, because it was a really good show, actually.
Right. Yeah, Barry Windham Jr. wrestled Lord Alfred Hayes, I think. Something's sticking in my mind about that.
In fact, he wrestled twice, because he wrestled Lord Alfred Hayes, and then he did a mixed match with the midgets. Wyndham and Cowboy Lang versus Little Tokyo, and I don't know who Tokyo's partner was at the moment.
I don't remember that.
He wrestled twice that night, actually, Wyndham. So,
but yeah, Dusty Rhodes was. He was so charismatic even back then, without hardly any. You knew about him from the wrestling magazines, and what little bit came from Florida, and then Now, after Florida left, I moved to Washington State. So that was like the end of wrestling here for a while, and then AWA came in right after that, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, they put a little bit of Owens TV on from up north. You know what? I think that was before all the other promotions, actually. I think that was like the first one, because I remember it wasn't real different from the end of Shire with Buddy Rhodes and Ron Starr and
Ed Wachowski.
It was kind of similar people.
Right.
So I think that was first. I think the last one was Florida, actually, before AWA.
Gotcha. And then, the AWA came in, and they bring, Patterson and Ray in every once in a while for, but not often. But, Hulk Hogan came in with them, that. And I remember when I was visiting my mom for Christmas or something, maybe not Christmas, but I got to, I don't remember if it was the Cow Palace or if it was the Oakland Coliseum, most likely the Cow Palace. It was when Hogan was with the AWA and Jerry Blackwell was beating the hell out of somebody in the ring. I don't know, maybe it was Gagne or whatever. All of a sudden, Eye of the Tiger comes on, and Hogan runs out of the dressing room, body slams Jerry Blackwell twice, and walks back to the dressing room.
Yes, I was there that night. That was really great, actually, to see live. That was Hogan's debut, actually.
Gotcha. Okay. I'm glad my memory is working.
Yeah, Hogan worked I think he worked two guys in the opening match, and he worked like a heel, but he won, and then Blackwell was like the second or third match, and Hogan did the babyface run in.
Right.
Yeah, and the crowd went nuts. Of course, nobody else had music then either, but still, I mean, you could see Hogan's charisma was just off the charts already. So they couldn't go with him as a heel long, and they didn't even make it through the first night. So
you're right.
I was there. Yeah, I think that was the Oakland Coliseum, actually.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. I always wondered how many times Vern Gagne kicked himself in the ass and said, "I should have given him the title."
Oh, I know. And I love Nick Bockwinkel as the heel champion. I mean, he was great, but it was just time to go with Hogan. I mean, you could see that. And when he didn't pull the trigger on it, that was a big, big mistake. Although, McMahon would have stole him anyway, whether he had the belt or not.
Right.
I mean, nevertheless, Vern should have pulled the trigger at that point,
right.
for sure. So.
Yep. I never understood.
My favorite part about those AWA shows by far was Bobby the Brain Heenan.
Oh.
Every event. I mean, he was just amazing worker. He was, the manager who would outwork most of the wrestlers on the show, and he'd wrestle on the undercard, and then he'd be the manager in the two main events, and he'd usually end up juicing and taking all these crazy bumps. And I was mesmerized by watching Heenan, ringside on those shows. That was really great.
Do you remember a match, I guess in all the territories wherever AWA went, they'd have the local favorite beat the hell out of Heenan in a match, and they'd do a little angle and everything. But here, Pat Patterson got him. And I think it was, were you there for that?
Yeah, let's see. I was there for every AWA show except like the very first one. Well, not every one, but up until for the first 3 or 4 years after the first one, I went to every show every month. And I do remember Patterson got him, and Heenan played it and everything for him.
Yeah.
I can't remember what the situation was. I think it was a tag match. Because once Stevens even came back and teamed with Patterson. I think they only did that once.
Oh, yeah. Well, let me correct you. I think they did it twice against Adrian Adonis and Jesse Ventura for the titles. Once for sure, I'm thinking twice, and it was a count-out and a disqualification. So, Patterson and Ray, didn't get the titles. But, you know what? It was just...
Now I think about it, I'm also remembering them coming out for a 6-man tag with somebody at one point, a little bit later. So I guess they did bring Stevens in a few times.
Yeah.
So.
And, I mean, yeah.
Adonis was another one. He was such a good worker at the time. I was just getting to the point where I actually understood what work even was, and Adonis was just out working everybody out there. He reminded me a lot of Buddy Rhodes. Even when he got big, he still had that agility and great worker Adonis was.
Buddy Rose is along with Ron Starr, just like the Kenny Singleton of wrestling, because very underrated. I mean, Buddy Rose.
So underrated. Rose headlined for Shire at the end, and I was a big Buddy Rose fan. I thought and then he headlined Portland for a very long time.
Oh, on and off as a heel, as a good guy as a heel. And he even, they gave him the Rose Garden when he was well over 400 pounds. Owens did. And he was amazing. Just amazing.
Taking all the same bumps, at that weight. So it was just amazing. His agility
could just go back and forth and shoot old school stuff back and forth. People don't realize just how good of a wrestler Bobby was. I mean, you know, sure, he managed the Blackjacks. He had the forever feud with the Bruiser, but he managed the Valiant Brothers. I think one of the biggest blade jobs I remember as a little boy from the wrestling magazines was Bruiser and Bruno Sammartino against the Valiant Brothers with Bobby Heenan managing. You know,
yeah. He would do big blade jobs. Every time he played it, I mean, he's got all kinds of color. It was great. And his bumps were by far just out of this world for that era. I don't think anybody was taking bigger bumps than Heenan was.
No, they weren't. You know, I mean, everybody talks about Ric Flair doing the go around across the apron and fly over the ropes or whatever. Heenan was doing that maybe 15 years before Flair. Maybe 20.
Yeah, and it looked a lot more brutal when Heenan did it, too. When he would hit his head on the middle buckle and flip and everything, I mean, he did some amazing stuff, Heenan. Even just when he would escape from the ring, like when they would corner him and he would run around in a circle and then dive over the top rope, just that was a big bump, you know.
I loved it. You know, but when the AWA was here, when I moved back from Washington, they were still here. Although I did see my share of wrestling in Washington, but that's for another time. I mean, they had Bobby Heenan and Weasel suit matches against Greg Gagne, and I was like, oh, God, I hope he's getting paid.
He really worked that angle well, though. I mean, it was ridiculous. I remember when I watched it, it was, you know, Gagne put him to sleep. Right. Well, Gagne won the match, and then Heenan refused to put the Weasel suit on. So Gagne puts him out with the sleeper, puts him in the Weasel suit, wakes him up, and, you know, Heenan does the slow wake up and doesn't know where he is, and then he reaches up to check it on his head, and he looks down and sees a paw on his hand, he looks and sees a paw on the other hand, and then he starts seeing everything. When he finally finds the tail, he goes berserk, starts chasing Gagne, and he ends up doing a dive over the top rope, trying to catch Gagne, hit the table at ringside, and injured his knee, couldn't come out with Bockwinkel in the main event. It was really well done, actually.
Yeah.
But it was ridiculous.
So did you have any Bruiser Brody memories from the AWA when they were here? Because he was here a couple times with it.
Yeah, I always remember Brody. The thing that stuck out for me was the television angle when they finally turned Blackwell babyface, Jerry Blackwell.
Yes.
After a long run as a heel in the AWA.
Yes, he did.
And he got attacked by Brody and, I don't even remember who else now.
Was it Abdullah the Butcher?
Exactly.
Yeah,
with Adnan LKC as the manager. Yeah, and they turned on Blackwell. It was Abdullah and Brody. And, you know, they had 7 or 8 baby faces beating the hell out of Brody to get him off of Blackwell, and he wasn't selling the thing for anybody. You know, he's going around with them all on his back, around his neck, and Brody was just a monster out there. I'd never actually seen a heel no-sell to that degree, and it was pretty amazing. He was really over at the time. So that was great. That was a great angle, and I saw him live a few times. He didn't last very long, though, in the AWA. He came out here a few times, though.
Right, yeah, he was in demand all over, and my favorite Bruiser or Brody angle in the AWA is when he beat the crap out of Jim Brunzell and Greg Gagne.
yeah, he did. Again, it was 2-on-1, and he just beat the hell out. They did an entry angle with both of them, I think, right?
Right, yeah.
Put them both out.
Oh, I love that, because I hated them ever since they started. Then they're sure they're good guys and everything. I was a lot for the heels when the AWA was here, because I just missed Shires and the old days so much. I was jonesing, and I'm like, we got this crap. You know, but
I was definitely a fan. Now that I look back, I guess Brunzell was a pretty good worker. He had a hell of a drop kick. But Gagne seemed like a nice guy, but just, I was like, what the fuck is this?
Exactly. I mean,
same with Zuma. I couldn't stand him. I love, you know, the angle Heenan did, breaking his radio and everything.
And what a fucking dirtbag he turned out to be.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, that was crazy. I mean, he got convicted for all kinds of, like, was it his own kid?
It was his own kid. Yeah. And then when the judge sentenced him, and as soon as the gavel hit the bench,
right.
He turned and ran.
I wish there was video of that.
Like he's gonna get away, you know.
That is so funny. That's awesome.
Oh God, yeah. But yeah, I'm glad we could both, talk about all of this. Now, did you ever get up and see Owen's promotion at all, or just from tapes, or what was?
Only a little bit on TV, and then a few years later when I started collecting tapes, I got a lot of tapes, because I was a Big Buddy Rhodes fan from San Francisco, so I just wanted to check all that stuff out, and I ended up getting a lot of Owen tapes. I really liked TV, but no, I never went up there. My first trip to the Pacific Northwest was only like 5 or 6 years ago, so.
Gotcha.
But I really enjoyed the product, actually. And I got the tapes of when Buddy Rose turned babyface finally, and they had the Dynamite Kid in and everything.
Right.
It was just great TV. It was awesome.
Oh, God, yeah. I mean, when I lived, my parents would send me up there from the time I was 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11 to Pendleton, Oregon for the summer to live with my aunt and all of her kids. And that's when I really got into wrestling with my aunt, because she was in love with Jimmy Superfly Snuka. And just she lived and died for him. And my very first main event that I saw with her was Bull Ramus against Superfly in a strap match at the Pendleton Armory. And then I came back to, and also just a young Jesse Ventura, I want to say was on that card, but when I looked at the time frame and the matches on Google, he wasn't. But, God, I remember seeing him there.
Wasn't Bull Ramus the partner up there for a little while?
Yeah. Yes, they were. Yeah. Yeah, well, yeah.
I thought so.
So, maybe I did remember seeing him, and he just wasn't mentioned or wrestling that night, and he came out to second Ramus. And that's why he wasn't mentioned in the results. So then I come back to the Bay Area and told my mom about wrestling and everything, and we watched it on TV. And Dutch Savage was just coming down to start his feud with Pat Patterson. And my mom fell in love with Dutch Savage. Who's that hunk of a man? And so she drug me to the Cow Palace and would not give me the binoculars during Dutch Savage's preliminary match. Because, you know how Shires would bring, first you'd face, Jerry Monty. Then you'd face Pepper Martin or Pepper Gomez. Then you'd go into a main event. Guy Lambert. And you know the formula with Shires. And then you'd face Pepper Martin or, I forgot, there was one other guy, Earl Maynard. If you got by Martin and Earl Maynard, then you got a U.S. title match. So I was hooked. And with the neighbor, kids would come and their parents would take turns with my mom and dad taking them. And one of them, Alan Bolte, I don't know if did you get a chance to really talk to him at Incredibly Strange Wrestling?
A little bit. Not as much as I wanted to, because I remembered him from way back in those days. But I've definitely been on a few shows with him, so I talked to him a little bit.
What got me for him, outside of, when the lights would dim, the referee would come jogging down, Frank Nolsetti or Larry Barnhart, whatever the guy's name was, to jump in the ring, and then here would come Alan with, a most outrageous, colorful suit, and you knew it was ready for wrestling. You knew. That's what got me about Alan. But for some reason, what resonates in my mind, and I'll ask you what your favorite Alan memory is when he would announce, the Godfather of Wrestling, Gerhard Kaiser, and he'd just get into it so much, and just remember it like it was yesterday.
Yeah, he was a great ring announcer, actually. I really liked him in that role.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I haven't heard the name Frank Nocsetti in so long. That's funny.
Yeah.
That's right.
So
I totally forgot that name until you said it, but I remember Frank Nocsetti like it's yesterday. So.
Yeah, he went referee the main events. He'd go to the preliminary matches. I guess Roy didn't trust him, or maybe I'm wrong. I'm sure there's a couple guys out there that will correct me. But now back to you. You've done it all. You've done everything. You promoted you promoted cards. You put the ring together. Did you ever do any ring announcing and refereeing?
I did refereeing a lot for ISW under a mask. I would do quite a bit of the night, as a matter of fact. And then Johnny Legend had this thing where they would unmask me after the main event, and it would turn out to be me, and then I would do the match, which I wasn't crazy about, actually, because refereeing under a mask all night was extremely hot and uncomfortable. But I did a lot of that on ISW. The only thing I've never done is ring announce, actually.
Gotcha. Vandale Drummond was on my show once, and he told the story about Johnny Legend gave him, and I forgot the name of the gimmick, but he was a wrestler infected with AIDS, and it was a battle royal, and he gigged himself. He bladed. Everybody left the ring, and he was declared the winner.
That's awesome. Vandal Drummond was also one of our abortionists, too.
Right, yes. Oh, yeah.
The first few shows, we just brought out the abortionist, wasn't really a worker. It was all just, the whole joke was, grind the coat hanger and try to give a chick an abortion, and it didn't really matter if they could work. And then all of a sudden, Johnny Legend tried, Vandal Drummond under the mask, and all of a sudden we had an abortionist who could work a match, and, flying around and taking bumps. That was pretty cool.
Oh, you guys were incredible back then. And the thing I want to talk about now is if anybody has little kids listening on my show, geez, I've never had more than 130 hits on any show, and I don't know if any kids listen. Put the kids upstairs, give them a bologna sandwich, and come back down, and let's talk about your valet waking you up in the middle of the ring in a very controversial and crowd-roaring fashion. How did that come about?
Well, I'll start at the beginning with that, actually, because it was a gimmick that it moved along. It actually had a few stages. My original idea was when I would get knocked out, she would take her panties off and rub them under my nose. That was how we were going to wake, and that's what we did the first few times. She woke me up that way, and I would sit up like The Undertaker, from being unconscious to
right.
The panties woke me up. Then we did it. We took it to the next level where she tried the panties. That didn't work, so she sat on my face and grinded around until I sat up and continued the match. So at this point, we're like, how do we take it to the next level? The first two were my idea, and we're all trying to rack our brains, and she said to me, hey, I could pee on you. So I was like, well, can you do it? And I really was unsure if she'd be able to do it, but she's like, yeah, I know I can do it. I know I can do it. She was really getting into it at the time, and she got herself psyched up. And the first time was at the Trocadero.
I was there.
I was knocked out by the rapist who I was perpetually wrestling all the time, it seems like, at ISW. And she came in the ring, and she took the panties off, which got a pop. People actually remembered she did that, but she didn't even try the panties. She tossed them to the side and just peed on my face. And that was the revival gimmick on that night. And the crowd went ballistic.
Oh. I mean, from a fan standpoint, I didn't know much about Incredibly Strange Wrestling except you were there, you were on top, and Alan was the announcer. I had no idea that was going to happen. I was just, what the fuck? This is great! Look at that!
What's funny is a lot of people, well, not many people knew it was going to happen. We liked Johnny Legend. He was great. He was our friend and everything, but, he was running the show, but he had a lot of nightclub people he had to answer to. So we learned pretty quick we couldn't really tell Johnny everything we wanted to do because we would get shot down by the nightclub people. So we didn't tell anybody about that. Johnny knew we were going to do, like, a brawl to end the show, and he pretty much left it at that. He said, do a 5-minute brawl and just end the show on a good note. Okay. So he knew about the panty thing we'd done in the other shows, but he had no idea about the golden shower thing.
Well, you did it again.
They were flipping out in the club. They weren't thrilled with it, but, he was like, he thought it was the greatest thing because just the crowd reaction. He wanted to take off running with it. So Johnny was caught in the middle a lot. That was unfortunate. So,
well, you did it to a second show, if I remember right.
Yeah, we did do on the second one. Let's see. Now, that was back at the Transmission Theater.
Right. Now, that's where I was. Okay, now it's all coming back to me. I was a doorman at the DNA Lounge, and the managers knew each other, and the doorman for that night wanted to see your show. He didn't want to do the door, so I said, I'll do the door, So I actually, I saw it again, and it was just as good the first time as the second time. It's just as good the second time as it was the first.
Right.
Oh.
Actually, the last time we did it, we took it out into the crosswalk in the street.
Right.
At the Transmission Theater, and she did it to me right there. Like, we held up traffic at the green light, and she was peeing on me there while everybody was shooting at us and driving around us. And
only in San Francisco.
I fired from ISW, but it was worth it. We kind of knew we were going to get fired, so that was kind of our way out. But so we went off on a big bang that time, and I mean that got right up all over the place. I mean, it was written in magazines and newsletters everywhere, and it was unheard of. That it still is to this day,
I'm so glad you're on my show talking about golden showers in a wrestling ring. Only on DERFCAST will you be able to hear that, folks. Read into it what you want out there, all the haters. I don't care. I have a question from Matt Mann. I don't know if you're familiar with him. He goes to all the all the independent shows here in the Bay Area. He supports them. Great guy. I've had him on my show twice.
Yeah, he's a good guy.
He wants to know your craziest Ron Head memory. I hope I'm pronouncing his name right.
Ron Head, yes, you are. Oh, my God. He's consistently entertaining. Craziest Ron Head memory. Let me think about that one. I mean, he is hilarious just day to day to day, and every time you see him. So, trying to think of one that stands out. You know, the one that I really liked was when he ring announced in Smoky Mountain Wrestling, and we were traveling around with them all week. It was Cornette and the Heavenly Bodies. It was actually the first week that Chris Jericho and Lance Storm were in America from Canada, and we picked them up in a rental van, and we had Dick Murdoch with us too. It was crazy, big man.
Jesus.
We finally got to the end of the week. There was this one town in Hyden, Kentucky, and it was a real small turnout. There was hardly anybody at the show. There was maybe, 120 people or something. It was the smallest show of the whole trip. So Cornette just said, screw it. We're just going to screw around out here. Ron Head was the ring announcer, and Cornette and the Heavenly Bodies were consistently attacking him throughout the whole match against the Rock and Roll Express. And he didn't know it was coming. It's like Jimmy Del Rey would take big bumps over the top rope, and no matter where Ron Head was, he'd manage to take him out, And Ron Head is selling. It was just hilarious, actually. And Cornette would end up landing on him, and Pritchard would trip and land on him. They were dogpiling on him. And that was the same show where the Dairy Queen massacre happened when we were leaving that town. So that was a very eventful night, actually.
That's internet lore, what you're talking about. Wait a minute. I'm old. Let me slow myself down here. You were actually in the van when that was recorded and happened?
Yes, I was. And, now that I think about it, I think I said earlier Jericho taped it, but no, it was Ron Head who taped it, actually. Because I remember Ron Head just happened to have a camera in his hand and was looking at that main event where they were all dogpiling on him. And he happened to, see that Cornette was getting, irritable, so he got to the end of the tape and he hit record. And after the whole thing, I asked Ron, did you tape that? And he said, yes. I said, oh, great. Now, in Jericho's book, Jericho took credit for taping it, but it was definitely Ron Head who video recorded that. So,
wow. Jeez.
Dick Murdoch, that was the only night of the week Murdoch didn't ride with us. Dick Murdoch was great, by the way. Riding with Dick Murdoch for a week was one of the greatest things ever. But that night, he wanted to catch up with Bob Armstrong, so he rode with him. So we had one person down in our van, and we ended up with Cornette instead of Murdoch, and that's when the whole thing happened. And Cornette's got the very short fuse. So, he plays the pussy manager running and stuff, but Cornette's the first one who will jump in somebody's face and want to fight for real, and that was proven that night. So.
Yeah, I've heard the tape. I've heard the explosion on the tape. So, did you hang out with Jericho a lot during that run, during that trip? Did he talk to you a lot?
Yeah, Jericho was great. He was really cool. So was Lance. Lance was a little shy, and Jericho was just, I got along with Jericho great right from the beginning. We picked them up right from the airport coming in from Canada, and I really liked Jericho a lot. He was really cool, and I went down there a couple more times, and every time I saw Jericho, he was great. And the last time I saw Jericho was, oh my God, WCW was out here in Oakland.
Right.
I want to say 99,
and
I had my hair cut real short, and I was shaved. A lot of local wrestlers saw me at the bar and didn't recognize me. Guys who just seen me a few months ago. I hadn't seen Jericho in years. He's standing at the bar with Benoit, and Jericho sees me, and he recognizes me, which, a lot of guys weren't. And he calls me over, and he's like telling Benoit, this guy right here, he's great. He got peed on in the ring by the Skirtle. He's telling Benoit the whole story. And that was great. Yeah, Jericho's a great guy. I really like Jericho a lot. He was cool. And I knew he was going to make it right from the beginning. You could just take one look at him, and you knew that he had a future. So.
Well, he was a rookie in I don't know how long the promotion was here, called Bay Area Wrestling. And he was on TV a couple times. It looked like that was a surfer dude.
I saw him live in Newark one time, years before the Smokey thing. That was when, Mae Young was a part of that promotion, right?
Right, exactly. Yes.
Yeah, and I went to Newark, real small crowd, and Jericho worked in, the first or second match. I would assume he went over, but I really don't know. Those shows were pretty horrible, but I remember Jericho from that, and we brought that up when we saw him. We said, you were down in California once, and he remembered the show, and God, I can't remember who he worked. It was only the first or second match he worked in, and he was by far the best worker worker on the show, but actually there was another good worker on those shows, which was oh God, I'm drawing a blank. Somebody's son. I don't remember right now.
Well, it'll pop up. Now, some of these stories are in your book called Extremely Strange by J.R. Benson. Is it J.R. Benson or Jeff Benson on the cover?
J.R. Benson.
J.R. Benson. I was right the first time. You guys, anybody out there has a chance to get this book, please do. It's 600 more. I mean, it's 600 or more pages. That's great. I mean, you get, you know, not to cut any wrestler down who's wrote a book, but Pat Patterson just wrote a book. And basically, it was under, 300 pages? It was so disappointing.
Most of the books are pretty thin.
Right.
With the exception of Mick Foley and Bret Hart.
Exactly.
And I mean,
yours.
my God, Bret Hart was like, 2 Bibles.
Right. I mean, that's great. That's a couple days worth of reading.
Bret Hart's book. I'm not the biggest Bret Hart fan, and that was one of my favorite books I ever read, actually. That was a great book.
Really?
So, and Mick Foley's book was incredible.
Oh, yeah, any of his books.
I like Ole Anderson's book, but that was also a little on the thin side.
Right.
Most of these books are not that big, so mine was quite a few pages compared to the norm.
I had Keith Elliott Greenberg on twice so far, and he's written a bunch of books for WWF, or WWE, Billy Graham, Ric Flair, I think. Anyway, he said that the reason why the books are that is for production costs, and they sit in the shelf. You could have more books in the shelf that way. And that kind of makes sense.
And they use a lot of, he's the ghostwriter they use, right?
Yes. Yes.
Very few of these guys have done books without a ghostwriter. The only ones I know of, besides me, would be Mick Foley and Vince Russo. I know he wrote his own book. But,
and Jericho Jericho does a lot of his book, but not the whole book.
Yeah, he had a good book, though. That was an entertaining book, actually.
And I love...
he had the ghostwriter for part of it.
Right.
So...
I love how Jericho is over right now. I mean, my favorite wrestler of all time, next to you, is Roddy Piper. I mean, if you go to my page, I could go on and on and on, and people that listen to my show probably get sick of me saying it. But Jericho reminds me of Roddy right now. He just, in a way, I can't put my thumb on it, but he just commands attention when he's on the screen. And even some of his stuff is ridiculous, like, you're on the list and breathe it in, man. And I love it. I love it.
He carries himself with that same confidence that Piper has. He knows it's going to get over no matter what he does. He just knows that he's got it like that now. And, but I was a big Piper fan, too. I mean, back in the Shire days, I used to watch the LA wrestling from the Olympics in the middle of the week on Spanish Network.
Yep, Wednesday.
And Piper was getting pushed like crazy when he was young down there. And every week there was all these Piper angles and promos, and I mean, he was just incredible. I love Piper down there. So that was how I got smartened up, actually, about wrestling, was because Piper was feuding with Moondog Mayne in San Francisco, but they were partners in Los Angeles on the same week.
Yep. You'd see him on Wednesday doing an interview about beating Mil Mascaras up, and Piper's fighting Backlund, and Moondog's fighting Mascaras. Mil Mascaras, no yob. And that's from another podcast. And then Saturdays, they were up here doing tremendous interviews and promos against each other. So you knew something was up.
Ballpark from everybody, and you really believe they wanted to kill each other. And then on Wednesday night, they're the best of friends. So,
right.
So that's when I kind of said, okay, now I see something's up. I was really young, but there was no way to ignore that. So.
Oh, exactly. I mean back then...
Fire allowed that to happen, but I guess there was nothing he could do about it. So.
Right. Well, LaBelle had him down there, and Roy had him up here. And it's just a shame, Moondog passed the way he did. Wouldn't he have made a great manager?
Oh, yeah. He was amazing. He was before his time, too. I mean, all the crazy shit he would do during interviews, and, he's eating the fish and eating glass and
cutting himself,
raw meat, and just all kinds of craziness, and you never knew what he was going to talk about. His interviews are really good. I watched a few of them on YouTube, and they still hold up to this day. He's an amazing promo.
Yeah. Oh, my God. Yeah, he was only 34 or 5 when he died. People don't realize
he looks so much older. But not that he's a bad worker in it. He looked like an old guy, but... great. I loved him. I remember I read in the paper that he had a car accident, and then I watched wrestling, and sure enough, that he passed, and that sucked.
Yeah, that was my first wrestling death that really hit me. Outside of a couple in the magazines, Bobby Shane and whatever. But yeah, that hit home as a teenager.
I remember died a few years later. That was a bummer. But
yeah,
those were the first two I remember that were.
He was just the consummate pro. He wrestled the who's who in wrestling, from the Sheik, Billy Graham, Pedro Morales, Bruno Sammartino, Ernie Ladd. If you go to YouTube, Jeff, I don't know if you've seen it, his last match for the WWF, if I'm not mistaken, is against Haystacks Calhoun. And he does the job, but he does it in such a way that he is still over, but he put Haystacks over. And it's so professional. You know, he was great. Yeah, and he worked all sorts of territories, too. And he was just, he was really great. And babyface or the heel role, too. He could do either one just as effectively. So yeah, he was amazing. But Roddy, I mean, we could go another whole show and talk about him. Just, you knew watching him against the Guerreros, whether it was Mondo, Hector, Gory, Chavo, of course. You knew he was going to be a star. You know? Definitely. I mean, and they gave him so much. I mean, they booked him in all kinds of angles every week. And for a guy that young, and he was kind of small, too, they really treated him like, you know, the top heel and pushed him as such. I mean, he deserved it, clearly. But, you know, a lot of times the old-timers won't really do that for somebody that young, especially back then. And they sure knew in L.A. what they had, and they really went with him. So I mean, you know, he came up and he was put right away with Crusher Perdue, Java Runk, in L.A. And just you just saw something in him. And then, you know, he came up here, and Maine died, and he stayed up here for a bit. I know Rock Rims doesn't talk about it in the book because it's really not known why Roy, when Lonnie died, Moondog passed, why Roy didn't make him the U.S. champ. Because it would have been a natural with Buddy Rose here. And, you know, Rose and Roddy went on to have a major, major feud in Portland wrestling. And big money up there, so amazing. It would have been great down here, too, if they'd done it. It would have been great. And then they brought Snuka in and against Rose. Now, do you remember, since you're a good Buddy fan, I've always wanted to find out why did he cut himself blades so deep that he used that same cut for about 2 years? Buddy Rose? Yeah. Yeah, he really did. And you would see that thing in all the promos, you know, just that big gaping cut all the way across his head. So yeah. Then when he bled, you know, he was a very unsung wrestler, just like Ron Starr, but even more underrated than Ron Starr, which Rock Rims wrote a book about riots and wrestling with Ron Starr. But Buddy Rose, people just remember him from the blow-away diet. It's a shame, you know, in WWF. Yeah. It's a shame that's what people remember at the end. Him and Adonis both just became, you know, weight jokes at the end. They were two of the best workers, you know, ever, both of them. But Buddy Rose had main event potential that Adonis didn't, because Adonis couldn't talk, you know. Right. Buddy Rose could. Buddy Rose could carry a territory, and he did. I mean, he was amazing. I love Buddy Rose. And then he came to work for Roland for the APW tour in, let's see, that was 97. So did you showed up down there, and we worked all summer with Buddy Rose and Cowboy Lang, who, you know, Cowboy Lang was the first show I ever went to as well. So it was really cool getting to travel with those guys, and we did all kinds of shows with them, and Rose was still doing every one of his patented bumps, and he hadn't lost a thing. He just, you know, he looked silly because he was so fast, you know. Right. He could still work, though. I mean, incredibly. He was just as good in the mic, just as good in the ring as he ever was. So did you go play poker with him? I do. He was really cool, Buddy Rose. He was really cool behind the scenes. So did you play poker with him? I didn't, but we did do a lot of shows with him, though. Did a hell of a lot of shows. I didn't get to work with him in the ring at all. Just, you know, it's great just being in the dressing room with him. I did get to work with Cowboy Lang one night, which was fun. Cowboy Lang, it was ridiculous. We went down to Fresno, and, you know, first Cowboy Lang did the thing where, you know, he bites your ass and you run around the ring and he fell for him. And then at the end, we just got ridiculous in the ring, and he gave me a backdrop. He gave me an airplane spin and all kinds of, I forget what other move he did to me, but
Cowboy Lang did like 3 or 4 big moves to me at the end to finish this one mixed tag match. And that was a lot of fun. So,
Dan.
Like maybe 2-3 years later. So.
What a career you've had. I mean, it's not too many people that could say they've got to hang out with their hero, let alone participate in something with them. That's great.
Yeah. Yeah, and like with Cornette, like I said, that was great, getting to hang out with Cornette. I mean, and we did shit behind the scenes, like for our backyard thing we were still doing, where Cornette, they were so into it, they actually did interviews with us for it at this, convention down there. So
right.
I got to do this one thing with Cornette face-to-face promo, and, I thought I was really good on promos back then. I guess I was, but, Cornette was just killing me out there, and I was loving every second of it, Well, and then Cornette hit me with the racket and everything.
I didn't know that.
It was fun getting to do shit with Cornette. That was
great. That sounds great.
I used to watch him on TV all the time. That was, besides Heenan, Cornette was my favorite manager ever. So.
And that's all in the book, Incredibly Strange, which you could get on UK Amazon, and I'm sure you could maybe on eBay. But they got hold of your VHS tapes and saw you guys on tape first, right? I remember the book right. Okay.
Right, and then so when we flew down there the first time, it was wild because, I hadn't met any of these people yet, but they were coming up to me in the airport, JR, and so they all knew me from the backyard tape. And, this was Pritchard, Del Rey, Tammy and Chris. Chris was a great guy, too. That was terrible when he died.
Yeah.
And I managed him once against Sabu, which, in San Jose, which was a very small crowd, but that was an amazing show because Sabu was just catching fire, and he hit me with a ridiculously brutal chair shot. I ended up, only time I had to go get stitches after a show, and I got 12 of them, so in my head from Sabu. So,
well, I bet one of the show's good listeners, Derek Sousa, was at that show. We can morph into XPW in a bit, but you were for Roland Alexander a long time. You were like one of the major heels in that promotion.
Yeah, I was there for a long time, right from the start. And then, Roland, I got nothing but good things to say about Roland now. Everything that went on before was just, heat of the moment, ridiculous. But we had a lot of heat. Like, I think I set the record for getting fired, probably, because Roland was firing me constantly for stupid things. But, but at the time I thought they were stupid. But, he was serious. But then he would bring me back all the time because me and Roland just got along. And so, I was on the very first APW show, and then sometimes I get fired, and I come back, fired, come back. And, we did the high school shows all over California. And then when he started doing Gym Wars at the garage, and he really wanted to go the ECW route, the first year Vic Grimes came around and everything, that was great. That was right up my alley. So, and me and Vic wanted to work together so bad right from the start. And finally Vic comes up with this idea where Vic was living in the garage at the time, so he had time on his hands. And he was looking at the garage door, which was up 20, 25 feet up at the top. And, it's got these rungs on it. It didn't look like something you could really climb, especially somebody at his weight, but Vic is just like amazing, and he figured out he could climb this fucking thing, and he wanted to jump off on somebody, and every wrestler said no. They were like, no, and Vic knew I would do it, so he grabs me and brings me into Roland's office, and the manager says, yeah, I'll take it, I'll lay there. So I laid there for Vic to jump off the garage door, which could have killed me, but he was amazing. He took the whole bump. He broke the table, but he took the whole bump on his ass on the cement. So
Jesus,
I didn't get injured at all. The chair shot he gave me knocked me silly, but jumping off the door was no problem. It was a great visual. So, everybody always remembered Vic jumping off the door on me. And everybody else he ever did that to got off the table. So, I stayed there for that one. So, that was great. And me and Vic ended up working together all the way until XPW. So, against each other always. So.
Well, a couple questions here involving that. Another one from Matt Mann again. What's your favorite Alexander memory?
Oh, my favorite Roland. Oh, God. Roland's funny. Roland is really fun. Okay, my favorite Roland Alexander. See, there was one show that really got out of hand at Jim Ward. Well, there was a lot of shows that got out of hand. There was one where a fan jumped in the ring and, all the wrestlers came out of the dressing room and beat the shit out of this guy. And it was excessive. They beat him up out of the gym and then out of the parking lot and down the street. It's in this warehouse area in Hayward. And, it was really excessive. But so the shows were getting more and more out of hand. And finally one night, there was a really wild show, and the wrestlers were just getting crazy. They were throwing chairs and garbage cans. They were hitting fans and everything. Small space. And, the whole night just really seemed out of hand to me, and then all the wrestlers were out of hand, and finally Steve Rosano was leaving, and he punched a fan. It was a underage fan, we're talking like a young teenager who said something to Rosano, and Rosano just like decks this little kid, right? And the kid is laid out outside, and there's Mike Modest, who's the main heel of the promotion, and it's real life. He's going babyface. He's got the kid in his arms, and he's saying he's going to kick Rosano's ass for doing this. All this shit. Everything's crazy. So Roland comes outside. He fires Steve. Steve leaves, and we're outside the building. And then all of a sudden there's a siren coming, and it was the ambulance for this kid that Steve hit. We didn't know if it was an ambulance or a cop or whatever. And here goes Roland, who had to be about 420 pounds at the time. He sees the siren coming, and he just takes off booking out into the dark in the bushes. So, he owns this property. He's the promoter, and Roland runs. I didn't think he could run at the time. He was so big, and he just takes off running out into the bushes and disappears until the ambulance is gone and everything's gone. And then I see Roland about an hour later, and he comes walking up to me like nothing ever happened. He whispers to me, so what's going on? I was just like, are you serious? I mean, you're responsible for the whole thing, and he just takes running off into the bushes. And actually, okay, a better Roland one was that show we drove to Fresno where I worked with Cowboy Lang. We all rented a bunch of vans. So Roland rented vans, and we were all riding together. And me and Ron Head decided to take acid before we got in the van, right? So, we each did 2 hits of paper acid, So we're riding for a long time. I'm sitting right next to Mike Modest, who was, militantly anti-drugs, and I'm crying on acid. So we stopped somewhere, and Roland gets out of his van. He was riding in a different one, and Roland says, hey, come here. I want to talk to you about something. And he takes me for a long walk out into the dark wherever we were, and I'm crying on acid. And Roland starts telling me all this stuff. He's very serious, and he's just really adamant about whatever he told me. He talked for about 3 minutes. I was so high, I didn't get one thing he said. And I just kept saying, yeah, nodding my head and agreeing. And, okay, so you understand me? Yeah. I still to this day don't know what Roland told me. I was so high on acid, I had no idea.
So you were like the Billy Martin of all pro wrestling, and he was Steinbrenner, kept hiring and firing.
Right. Always firing me, and then he'd call me back 2 months later, and usually I'd come back pretty quick. So, and we always were on good terms. Except, whenever I was not working there, we were kind of talking trash about each other. But whenever I saw Roland, we always got along great. He was a good guy. So I always like to say Roland had a heel turn when they did those Gym Wars shows from 97 to 99, and when they did the Beyond the Mat movie. Roland got a little full of himself. That was like his heel run right there, for real. But by the end, his last few years, he got along with everybody, and he was just a really nice guy again. Roland was great.
Yeah, I met him online, and he actually invited me to the gym, and I met him, went down there, he gave me a tour, and the funny thing was I used to work at Event Productions Incorporated, EPI, which was right on the opposite side of All Pro Wrestling Gym. This little industrial complex. We were a trade show.
Well, yeah, okay.
Yeah, we put on trade shows. So you'd see us loading our trucks with carpet and chairs and shit like that. And it was at the same time that the great Khali was training at Roland's place.
Oh, yeah. Somebody died training with him.
Yes. Oh, yeah. From what I read.
I wasn't there anymore at that time, but I heard about it, and that was unfortunate. And that cost Roland a lot of money, too. So.
Really? It did, huh?
Yeah, he got sued over it, but he wasn't able to pay the whole amount. But that's what ended up making it harder for him to run shows and get insurance. And so he wasn't worth the amount that they actually got the settlement for. So, but he had to really slow down his whole promotion at that point because they did get a judgment against him on that.
I never knew they got the judgment against him.
Yeah, and because apparently, the guy, he hit his head. I guess he hit his head before in training, and he was assuring everybody he was okay, and he looked like he was okay.
Gotcha.
He probably was okay, the thing with Khali probably killed him all on its own, but, there was accusations that you let this guy go with a concussion back into the ring, and then that he didn't get any kind of medical help quick enough, and that they just sort of left him laying in the ring to die. I don't know. I wasn't there, so, I just heard about this after the fact, but, that was a bad situation.
Oh, I bet. Well, let's lighten it up a little bit more here. My cohort and good buddy of mine Bob from Bob's Radio Cafeteria, which you can catch the clearances on YouTube, wrote a couple questions, easy questions. What's your favorite match of all time that you were involved in?
That I was involved in? Probably the one that you saw at the Trocadero with the golden shower thing at the end. Just because I don't think it was the best match we ever had, but everything went right, and it just flowed, and the crowd was so great, and they were with us the whole time. And
well, you came out of the ring.
There's nothing wrong with that match. I can't think of one thing I would change about it. So that would be my favorite one. Probably not the best one, but that would definitely be my favorite one.
Sorry to interrupt you. I apologize. You came out of the ring and took a chair shot, and now correct me if I'm wrong, you didn't have to blade. It was hard way, if I remember right. It was a long time ago.
Yeah, I actually had the blade in my hand. Blood was I could feel the blood already running. Yeah. So I did use the blade on my arm, which, Stacy, the valet, was biting my arm, and I bladed my arm, but earlier, before that, when I took the chair shot, I was about to blade my head, and I could feel the blood running down my neck, so didn't need to do that.
So I learned something from my last pod show, Supermouth Dave Drayson. We were talking about wrestlers who always bled, like the Sheik, Abdullah, King Curtis. When they couldn't cut their head, and Dusty Rhodes, they cut their arm. They blade their arm.
I remember Dusty did it a lot. That's where I got the idea from, was the old wrestling magazines from the 70s. I always thought Dusty was a bloody arm.
Right. Well, they did that because they couldn't keep cutting their forehead because no blood would come out.
Right. And the arm is pretty easy. You can get a lot of blood out of the arm.
I didn't figure that. So the Sheik would do that, too. But
yeah, he did.
Yeah. And Bob from Bob's Radio Cafeteria, which is really, really interesting videos he puts out under the moniker of Bob's Radio Cafeteria on YouTube. And then he has a band called The Clarences, which everybody should go out and support and see. That's on Facebook. But his other question is, who's your favorite wrestler, number one, and who's the favorite wrestler you've ever worked with, number two?
Let's see. Favorite wrestler. It changes from era to era.
Oh, well, okay.
Definitely. I'll tell you who probably had the most influence on me, ridiculous as it sounds, was the Sandman. I'm looking at what I'm wearing right now. I still dress like the Sandman in 1995 ECW, with the Zubas and the T-shirt tucked in. But aside from dressing like him, it wasn't so much just Sandman, it was ECW in general, because I was a manager always until ECW started. And, people always talk about, like, when does the size barrier get broken down in wrestling. But for me, it was also sort of the athletic barrier, because that's when it became a time where if you were just thick enough to do a hardcore match, you could actually start to make a go of it without having to be, the best athlete. So, and Sandman, was the epitome of that, and I just really thought he was really cool. I just loved his gimmick. So, yeah, I think Sandman was actually my favorite wrestler. He lasted for a long time for me, but it changes during eras. In the 80s, I was all about Ric Flair, but and I got tired of Ric Flair eventually. But as far as who I worked with, I always loved working with Big Brian. Every time we worked together, he always took care of me. But man, the shit we did just looked so brutal. You take shit from him. He's Mick Foley blown up to like 400 pounds and more agile, and just the shit he does, it's just unreal. And when you're in a match with Vic, it looks so vicious, but he never hurt me. He always took care of me, and I loved working with Vic. We worked a lot, and that was always good. Is
he still alive?
He is. He's not working anymore. He doesn't wrestle, but his health's better. He had a little bit of a health problem, but right now he's actually doing good. He doesn't work anymore, but he is still alive, and he's alive and kicking. He's on Facebook, and he's doing well.
Is he in California or?
Yeah, he's still in the Hayward area, as a matter of fact.
Really? Now, he had a cup of coffee with WWE, if I remember right, didn't he?
Yeah, that was the one of the main high-profile ways I got fired from Roland was, Vic had a hell of a match with Aaron O'Grady, who ended up being Crash Holly in WWF.
Yes.
They had an incredible match in Hayward. It was just unreal, and the way they worked together, big man, little man match. So I sent the tape to Cornette, and at this point he was working up in WWF, getting people, one of the things he did was he would line up tryout matches for the different towns they went to, and he saw the tape and he told me, oh, this is unreal. I want to get these guys a tryout match. And Roland and Mike Modest had a fit that I sent the tape out, and because they had other reasons they said, but to me it was just they didn't want to lose the guys to WWF. And I was like, you're charging these guys $5,000 for training at your school, and part of the promise is you'll try to ship them around to these other promotions, and now you're telling me I'm in trouble for doing just that, and they said, well, we would have sent a different tape, and we would have done this, and I said, yeah, but I got them a tryout, so they ended up letting me go for a little while over that, brought me right back, but they had the tryout match, and it was mostly for Vic, just take a look at Vic, but Crash ended up having the career there. Vic did one or two matches there, and then they sent him to ECW, and he was there till they went out of business. But WWF never brought him back, and I think they really missed the boat on him. I mean, he was the next Mick Foley at that time, so.
Gotcha on that. I never knew that. That he's still alive. I'm still nervous for some reason. I apologize. I'm usually calm, cool, sophisticated, and suave. But I'm just excited talking to you. I didn't know that about Vic, that he was still alive. Thank God. That's good.
I was just talking to him actually when I was in the hospital recently, and we had a good talk. And he actually found religion, Vic. So he's a religious guy now, and
that's good.
we still got along nevertheless. And he's a nice guy. I've always liked Vic a lot. And he's the same guy. He's still around. I would imagine he could still work, but he's probably, it's tougher when you're a big guy like that. Your body gives out a lot sooner, especially doing the shit he did.
Oh, I bet. Oh, it's ungodly, some of this stuff. I mean, people talk about Foley falling to a cage with The Undertaker. Vic was doing that, like, how many times?
Yeah, on a routine basis. And you had to stop him from doing, And then he got hit by a car that one time. And the time in XPW, I mean, that scaffold New Jack threw him off of was considerably higher than the Hell in the Cell thing mixed it. So that had to be the highest thing anybody's done.
Yes.
Owen Hart. I mean, So.
Yeah. Well, boy, we've talked about everything, Owen Hart, Golden Showers. So let's go right into XPW, talking about Golden Showers here. How did you get booked there? And that is what I'm jealous about. I would have loved to seen a card of XPW. Oh, man, with Rob Black.
Great.
Damn.
It was really cool. It was, I had decided I was retired at the time. Like, I didn't plan to do anything. I thought I was done with wrestling, and for a year or two, I was still watching it, but I didn't plan to work anymore. And but then I saw XCW, and I'd always wanted to work for ECW. That was the one thing I didn't get to do. And XPW wasn't quite ECW, but it was the closest thing we had there in California. And I said, I gotta try to get work here. And then my friends started getting, Vic was there, and Joe Applebaum with Pogo the Clown, and Steve Rosano, Ron Head became the ring announcer. So I started riding down with them to the shows. And Kevin Kleinrock knew who I was already, and I still not sure to this day how, but he's a really nice guy. And Kevin said, well, we'll find a place for you soon. Rob Black, I didn't think he was crazy about me at first, but that's just the way Rob is. So, I was just like, whatever. But Rob's wife, Lizzie Borden, she was the sweetest person.
Oh, I bet. More ways than
director of some of the most vile pornography ever produced, they say, and she was. But
that's what I wanted to ask you about. Sorry. I'm sorry for interrupting. I'm just excited here.
That's okay. She was a real mark for serial killers, too, so she sounds like a real, crazy bitch, but she was so nice, Lizzie. And we actually went to their house. Rob had this big mansion. He was a millionaire from the porno industry at the time, and so we went to their house one time, and that was a lot of fun. And, it was fun watching the shows. I went down there for like a year before they actually found a spot for me. And then they finally came up with a spot for me to manage. So then, I worked there not very long, only maybe the last 4 months they were in California. I did a handful of shows, and then that was it because they ended up shutting down. But I was around XPW from all 2001 and all 2002, and I'd go down with them like every 6 weeks. That was my time to get out of the house, and there was so much fun going to the shows. I went to a lot of big shows down there. Finally got to work the last 3 or 4 of them, so it was a lot of fun. It was great.
Tell me.
There was a trip I flew down there the first time they finally found something for me to do. They flew me down to do interviews like on a Thursday night after work. And I fly down to LA, and the receptionist picks me up at the airport. She's like, so are you here for the wrestling or are you here for the porno? I'm like, no, I'm here for the wrestling. And she drives me to this warehouse in L.A., and really, it was this huge warehouse. You had to, figure out which store was which before you just opened it up, because in some wrestling promos were being shot, and other ones pornos were being shot, and it was just crazy. They had a ring and a big warehouse for the tapes, and it was, half porn and half XPW, and he spent a hell of a lot of money on it, but it was a wild scene down there. It was really cool.
Damn. Well, tell me about that real tall wrestler that you managed.
That was, they called him Snuff, because, and the skit that we did to introduce me on TV was I worked at an adult bookstore. We actually drove to an adult bookstore, and they let us get behind the counter and shoot our interviews, and Snuff was coming in to buy, he was looking for actual snuff tapes, and I hooked him up with these snuff tapes, supposedly, and after he saw somebody get killed on the snuff tape, it made these short-circuited something in his brain, and he became, this killer. So he was a 7-foot monster known as Snuff that I managed in XPW. He had worked in WCW at The Wall.
Right.
And, the Dying Days of Nitro. Yeah, that was him.
I'll be damned.
Yeah, that was him. He was The Wall in WCW, and then he came in there as Snuff.
I'll be damned. You're right. That is. Oh, of course, I'm not doubting you, but damn, it just hit me. That's who that was. I could never figure out.
Yeah. He was based on, in XPW in the early days, they had a guy named Tool who dressed just like him, and he was based on the Tool thing. He wore the same gimmick and the same mask and everything, but this time he was much taller than Tool. And, that was The Wall.
Wow.
And it was funny because his very first match was against Vic Grimes, and we're all walking around, and we're down in Pico Rivera, that old deserted bull ring. Rob would do, the Olympic Auditorium most of the time in L.A., but then in the summertime, he would rent this old bull ring that was just abandoned and dilapidated, and that's when he'd get a bunch of bombs and, blow up the ring and do all this crazy shit.
Yeah,
So we're walking around this bull ring, and Vic is telling all these ideas to The Wall. He's a nice guy, but he's just looking at Vic like, you're out of your mind. So he was inserting me into a lot of Vic's ideas, which was always happening with me and Vic up in northern and southern California. Vic would come up with these ideas that a lot of wrestlers backed out of, and he'd say, okay, well, JR will do it, grab me. Sure. So,
wow.
We did great stuff down there. I mean, they had these, in that bull ring, they had all these, broken down cars that they would have laying around used as weapons. So Vic dumped a bunch of thumbtacks all over the car and powerbombed me on it, and he gave me, a Styles Clash off the top rope. Almost on Snuff, but he rolled out of the way at the last second, and just all kinds of crazy shit. It was great. They had they had really good matches, actually, Grimes and stuff.
So speaking of thumbtacks, what is the secret to that?
Fuck, there's really no secret. You just gotta be willing to do it. It hurts. It fucking hurts. It doesn't hurt going in so much because your adrenaline and everything. I can't remember it ever hurting that bad when I got slammed onto them. Usually I was fine, but taking them out backstage, oh my God, you got to do it quick. The longer you wait, the worse it gets. And I mean, it feels like at XPW I had one right in the back of my head, and I'd gotten all the ones off my back and off my arm and everything, and then somebody tried to help me out and just sort of yanked the one from the back of my head. It felt like a knife just being stabbed right in my head. I was like, what'd you do to me? They stabbed me or something? Taking the thumbtack out. Oh, okay, thanks. So,
wow.
Yeah, if you take them out quickly when you still have your adrenaline going, it's not so bad, but yeah, I waited too long a couple times, and that shit hurt. That shit really hurt.
Chris
then when I felt like Necro Butcher, he used to run in them barefoot and shit. I was like, oh, fuck that.
Now that guy, Jesus, that guy, the things takes a stapler to his forehead. I mean,
I was actually glad the last show I ever did was the XPW reunion show, and I got to manage Necro Butcher against Supreme, and I was glad I was a big Necro fan, and so I was going to come to the show. We didn't know what I was going to do, and Kevin just said, hell, I'm just going to have you manage Necro. I said, oh, perfect. So,
man.
Thanks, guy. He was right at the height of his craziness. I don't know what's going on with him anymore. I don't hear about him anymore.
Well, didn't he retire?
He was the craziest motherfucker. I mean, the only one I could think of who was crazier than Grimes was fucking Necro. He was insane. So.
Yeah, I remember, was his last match against New Jack or something like that? Somebody to that effect. But yeah, I mean, damn, what a career you have. I mean,
I actually, it just kept going and going, and at first it was just like, let's see how long I can ride this, and wasn't thinking it was going to go anywhere, and then I started thinking, well, this really is going somewhere, and it ended up lasting almost 16 years, so.
Damn, 16 long years. So, what's the most stitches you've ever gotten in your career at one time?
The most stitches was the one from Sabu. I had 12 stitches, and then on the inside there was 3 more stitches, so they really had to, like, put my head back together there on that one. But that was the worst one. Usually I managed to get away without any stitches, but he just completely ripped my head open with that chair. That was insane. So
did he ever?
I've seen the video of that one, but you can just hear it. It looked like he killed me. So
did he ever?
That was pretty brutal. It was Sabu was a cool guy and everything, but the match went haywire. Everything went wrong. It was a ladder match between Candido and Sabu, and the ladder was broken, and all their spots were fucked up, and they couldn't get the belt. So then finally the culmination was Sabu was going to give me a chair shot to the head, and all his frustration in that match, boy, he took it out right there.
Jesus.
I mean, it just ripped me open. So it went up and over, so it got me in the back of the head with, like, the top, the middle chair. So
did he ever?
The top portion, that just knocked me silly. I don't know how many concussions I've had. You know, I was always into self-diagnosing those. And,
gotcha.
And actually, you know, this sounds crazy, and it is, but my thing back then was, you know, I would do speed and stay up all night because they always tell you don't fall asleep if you have a concussion. So I always figured if I'm okay by the next morning, you know, I stayed up all night, so I'm not going to go into a coma, and I'm fine. So, because, I mean, almost every time I worked with Big Grimes, he knocked me silly, and, well, I mean, I know I probably had concussion after concussion, but I didn't actually have any of them diagnosed, so.
Got you on that. Did Sabu ever apologize?
Sabu?
Yeah, did he apologize?
Yeah, in a way. He asked me if I was okay the next time I saw him, and he was actually pretty impressed because the next time I saw him, I came walking up to him. We drove down to the show we weren't even booked on, and we got booked, me and Ron Head, and I walked up to Sabu, and he was like, how's your head? And I said, I'm fine, and then I said to him, so, hey, if you need anybody to put to a table tonight, I'll do it at the end of the match. You know, last time he saw me, I was off to the hospital because he fucked me up, and next time I saw him, I'm volunteering to get put through a table. We almost did it, but something went wrong. They didn't have enough tables, so I didn't end up getting to do it with them. But, you know, people were telling me backstage that I was pretty impressed by that. So
that's good.
I wanted to respect with that one because, I mean, I was very young at that point. I'd only done maybe a handful of shows, maybe 3 or 4 shows when I worked with Sabu, and, you know. So he respected that out of me. And then next time I saw him in Philadelphia, I just went to an ECW show, and we were smoking pot with him in his hotel room, and he was cool. So,
damn, I'm so jealous. I'd love to even talk to Sabu, let alone smoke dope with him. Well, I used to smoke dope. I haven't for 25 years, but since I was 33. But damn, if there was anybody in wrestling I'd want to get stoned with, it'd either be the Sandman or Sabu. Probably Sabu.
Sandman's funny. We watched Sandman get so fucked up down in FPW in the motel. I mean, he just, you know, you see him drinking at the ring, but he loves just drugs or just whatever you give him. And I mean, you're talking, you know, 2 in the morning when you've got a show coming up the next night, and he's doing lines and taking acid. Sandman's a nut, man. He's funny.
Oh, I bet.
He's a good guy. You know, he's a crack up. Like, he's never any problem or anything, but he's always just fucked up. So,
well,
and, you know, New Jack was a nice guy, too. I mean, I ended up, you know, I was a little leery of him at first. Him and Vic had problems, and New Jack was great. I mean, I got along with him great. Every time we went down there on those XPW show weekends, you know, we party all weekend at the motel, and New Jack's funny as hell. One of the funniest people I've ever met. So.
Well, he got to make it with Dustin's ex-wife, who I always had the hots for.
Oh, Terry?
Yeah.
Yeah, she was hot. She was hot.
She was hot. So let me ask you one question. What was the grossest thing you ever saw at XPW on the porn side?
On the wrestling or the...
On the porn side, because they got thrown in prison.
It was after I left, but I don't know if you know who Scott Snod is.
No.
He worked in APW. Nice guy, really clean-cut looking guy, and it was really funny because he was really clean-cut, and like even when we watched wrestling at the motel, he was into watching old Horseman stuff. You know, he didn't really want to watch any of the hardcore stuff. And
right.
Really nice guy, but really conservative. And then all of a sudden, after his first match, he starts telling Rob and Lizzie that he's like this porn connoisseur, right? And they're throwing all these porn terms back and forth, and the guy knew everything about everything and really won Rob and Lizzie over with that one. I had no idea this guy was so into porn. I saw a video a couple months later where he fucked like a 95-year-old woman for them on a video. It was called Fossil Fuckers. And he literally fucked like a 95-year-old woman on this porno. And I was just like, oh, my fucking God, are you serious?
Well, Rob Black ended up in prison, right? If I'm not mistaken, for porn?
Yeah, him and Lizzie both did a year.
Lizzie?
Yeah, Rob and Lizzie both did time. Both for that.
For what? Well, I mean, what was the final straw?
It was really goofy. It was like these videos that, they were selling through the mail, and they got them on some kind of a technicality where they ordered the videos from a state where in that state it's illegal to actually ship pornography to.
Gotcha.
And so they specifically did it. The FBI went and ordered them from the state, got them shipped to them, and then at that point they had the technicality where they could go in and bust them. Because they really couldn't bust them for anything else. I mean, the videos were, they were as hardcore as you could get, but they were all consenting people and nobody was getting hurt. So,
right.
And how do you decide what's obscene? I mean, if you're buying it by mail order, who's being forced to watch this shit? But they wanted to get them because, Rob had a big mouth and he talked shit on TV shows about, technically they could probably bust us for what we got, but we don't care. We're going to keep doing it. And he kind of called out the government, and they got him on this bullshit technicality, and then came in and arrested him and Lizzie, and they tried to take it to trial. They were going to fight it, but I think eventually they had to plea bargain it out. They were looking at a lot of time, and they ended up getting 1 year each. And it shut down Rob's company for a long time, I mean, he lost most of his fortune over that, so that really sucked. And then he still, to this day, I think, he still sells those videos. He calls them the Federal 5. It was the 5 videos he shipped that he did a year in jail for on his website. You can order the Federal 5, and it's those same pornos for sale on his site, so he's still rebellious as hell, but yeah, he had to give up XPW because they drained his whole fortune fighting that thing. So
I'll be damned. I've never seen that. I wanted to hear the story of that.
It was too bad. I mean, the videos were, I loved them, but they were as sick as you could get. But there wasn't really anything you could arrest somebody for, so they went the technicality route, but they were out to get them for sure. So. And Lizzie, I mean, she's funny. She's sweet as can be, but my God, she was the director of all 5 of those. So she's a sick one, man.
I bet.
Funny, though. She's a nice girl, and she seems too nice to be with Rob, because Rob's hardcore, and Lizzie just seems so nice. But then you see these videos she makes, like, wow, okay.
We'll have to talk about that off air. We'll have to talk about those videos off air. I think Golden Showers is enough for my show right now.
Probably, yeah.
What a ride you've had, man. And I'm so glad you're healthy. And
this had nothing to do with any of that, but that came out of nowhere and hit me this couple last months ago, but I feel better than I have in years now. I'm doing pretty well, so.
Yeah, that's good. I was scared when you kept sending pictures from the hospital. I'm like, what? Oh, geez, but I'm glad you're okay. And
they still don't know how I got it. It was some kind of a staph infection, but it actually latched onto the outside of my heart.
Oh, Jesus!
And I was sick for a long time, I guess, and I just didn't realize it. So it took me a while to get into the hospital, and they said I got there just in time. It could have been a lot worse. So, but they had to treat me for like 6 weeks of antibiotics. I was hooked up to a fucking IV, and it was terrible. But yeah, no, I feel great now. I mean, being in there, I wasn't doing any partying, and they were giving me all kinds of vitamins, and I was eating good, and I was going nuts in there, but I'm the healthiest I've been in a long time. So
that's good. That's good. Well, I want to thank you for being on the show. We've hit the 90-minute mark. I'd love to have you on again.
Sure.
Before we start saying goodbye and the closing stuff, Kurt White is having a battle royal tomorrow night in Fremont, or for that little city, Newark. Fremont, Newark.
Right.
Yeah, and Alan is announcing, Alan Bolte. I'm going down there. Bob from Bob's Radio Cafeteria is going down there. I don't know if you're going to be there or not, but his cards are okay. It's wrestling. It's really small, intimate. I don't know if you've ever been down there for Kurt White.
Many years ago. Didn't he have like an all-women show about a year or two ago?
Yes, he did.
I know he brought in some really good workers who I talked to on Facebook, and I almost went to that one just to see these girls I talked to because they're good workers and plus they were hot. But I ended up not going. But yeah, I've been to Kirk White shows many years ago, talking like maybe back in '99 or 2000. But
I mean, he has a horrible sound system, which is the only complaint I have. Just horrible. Other than that, it's fun. Alan does the announcing for him all the time. I'm riding down with him tomorrow night. I'll tell him you said hi. And I just thought maybe you were going. It's fun, you know. I mean, just to hear the body slams and the grunts and the groans, and it's an open dressing room. I mean, the fans don't go back there, I guess, you know. But, I mean, I sat back there, and the last show, I missed the last one, but the one before that, the Honky Tonk Man was there. And
okay, he's always fun.
Yeah.
Talk shit.
Yeah, him and this referee were telling a story of Brutus the Barber Beefcake and his love of ring rats back in the day. And he had a natural pipeline because all he'd have to say to the ring rats is, I'll get you in to meet Hulk. And so he did that, and his forte was giving the ring rats a golden shower. Now, I've talked about golden showers enough. I'm not into them. I'm just saying it was mentioned twice in the show. So Honky Tonk's sitting there with a towel wrapped around him, nothing else. It was after his match with Sam Cody. I think that's the guy's name, Shane Cody. Shane Cody, really nice guy.
That's the name I was trying to think of earlier, who I said there was one other good worker on those old young shows. Shane Cody.
Hey, good. It's come full circle. His father was Woody Farmer, which you know.
Right, that's what I was trying to think of earlier. I forgot both their names. But yeah, exactly, yeah.
And so I'm sitting there, first time in a dressing room with two bigger name stars, and they're telling the story, and Shane is just busting up. He had to get up and slap the table when he heard about Brutai, you know. And so I'm sitting there and you know, just laughing too. And then Honky Tonk looks at me and goes, "What are you here for?" And I go, "Oh, I'm here with Alan." Thank God Alan came right next to me, you know, and goes, "Yeah, this is my friend Fred, Honky," and you know,
Right. Oh, that's great. That's hilarious.
Yeah, I mean, I've never really liked him that much, you know, because of the way he spoke of Roddy Piper while Piper was alive and after, and you know, you've heard the story how Roddy got his name back from Honky after Honky bought his name and blah, blah, blah. You've heard all that.
Yeah, he did a lot of cheap shit, Honky. So
yeah.
Really.
Well, he didn't get away with it with Roddy.
No.
You know, his son Colt told me the whole story when I went down for the memorial at the Comedy Store. But anyway, enough of that. The show is going to end on you. Do you have any hankering to do anything in wrestling again on the independent circuit, if ever again, to make a one-time appearance or anything like that?
It's possible. I don't have anything in mind, but I mean, I definitely know. I know if I was around it again, you know, you always get hooked back in, and if there was something I liked, you know, something was going on that just attracted me, I could see doing something. I don't know about wrestling a match, but I could definitely see managing and taking some bumps and being involved in some degree. So.
Gotcha. Well, that would be great.
I haven't been to a Hood Slam yet.
Neither have I.
And I hear they're really good. I know Shane, who puts on the shows, and, you know, he's real cool. And I know him all the way back from ISW. And, you know, I hear they're really great shows. I just haven't gotten around to going to one yet. But, you know, I can imagine if I went to one of those and they wanted me to do something, I probably would. But, yeah, I don't have any plans to. But you never know. So.
Gotcha. Well, I would, if you want to ride there, just Facebook me. I'll take you there. No problem. I would love to go to that. Alan's always trying to get me to go to Hood Slam.
Yeah, maybe we should go to one of these days. I think they run like every 2 Fridays or something in Oakland.
Something like that, the first or last Friday of every month, something like that.
They got a great venue in Oakland. It's this nice theater, and I mean, we would have killed for that back in the Extremely Strange days. So, yeah, it's a great place. So.
Well, let me ask you one last question. If there was one thing in wrestling that you didn't do that you'd want to do, what would that be?
Well, I always wanted to work ECW back in the day, you know, when it was really just, you know, that era from 94 to 97, maybe trickling into 98. I was such an ECW fan. I mean, I was sending the tapes all the time, and, you know, we flew out there, we drove out there, and, went to shows and tried to get a hold of Heyman, and, I never got a chance to do that. That was the one thing I really wanted to do was work ECW. I got it out of my system with XPW, but, it's comparable, but it's not the same. So I would have loved to have done anything with ECW. At the ECW arena, that would have been great. So.
Gotcha. Well, Jeff, thanks so much for being on the show.
It was a good time.
People want to get, and I apologize if I was too uppity or interruptive. I'll be better next time.
Okay. But I'll definitely come back again.
If people want to get a hold of you, well, thanks for saying that, and want to get your book, give yourself a plug yourself, where they can get a hold of you, where they can get the book, the name, and all of that. And if you want to describe the book or anything, feel free. This is for you.
So the book is Extremely Strange by J.R. Benson. And if you want to get it directly from me, I don't have my website up anymore, but I'm on Facebook all the time. It's Jeff Benson. The address would be facebook.com/XPWBenson. If you want to find me. Or if you just want to get it directly from the publisher, that's lulu.com, Lulu. Or you can get it on iTunes. And, like I said, it's still available on Amazon UK. I don't think the Amazon here in the U.S. has it anymore. But, you can definitely find a copy one of those ways. So. Gotcha.
And you have plans on writing a sequel? That's my last question.
I did for a while, but I only really did one major show after the book concluded. It was the XPW reunion show. It was great. Managed Necro. I can't do a whole book about that. I do have some thoughts about a second book, that I think is actually better than the first one, but that was a lot of work, that first book. So I've told people I'm going to write another book, and they want me to. It's about a different topic, but we'll see. So
gotcha.
I'm a good writer, but it takes a long time to write a fucking book.
Well,
it's pretty hard. So
you're in my top 5 wrestling books of all time. I'm telling you, I couldn't put it down. It was like I was sitting next to you on your road with your road trips, going through your the relationships you went through in the book. It's a great retrospect of your career and the independent scene. It's a great book. I'm not just saying it.
It's a good book inside the independent scene. That's one thing you don't get in a lot of books. You've got these major league guys that write these books, but not a whole lot of books into the independent scene, and I really took you into every aspect of it. So if somebody's interested in that, there's plenty of that in the book. So, and also some big names that I, encountered. But, definitely it's a good look at the independent scene for sure, and also some sick stuff. So.
Oh, I love the sick stuff.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ, we're subjected to James Ellsworth on WWE and Roman Reigns shoved down our fucking throat with the plunger week after week after week after week. That's what I'm saying. Reading
it really makes you miss the late 90s,
maybe we could squeeze another couple minutes. What's your opinion of today's wrestling? Just be blatantly honest. You're not offending anybody on this show.
My whole life I watched everything that was on, that was available to me. Just like everything. And I really have stopped watching almost everything the last couple of years. So that tells you how bad it's gotten. The last time I watched WWE was when they did those ECW one-night stands, the first two. So that's going way back. I lasted with TNA a few years longer than that. I watched watch a lot of stuff on YouTube, but I don't really watch much on television. The last thing I watched was AAA on Galavision, and even that, we're going back about 3 years. So I just, not a lot of it catches my eye. The last thing I really liked was Ring of Honor, which, Gabe Sapolsky was Booker, then they took a turn for the different. But Ring of Honor had its moments. I really liked that product. It's the right product. I could get hooked in again in a second, but I just don't see it out there. So.
Gotcha. Well, Matt Mann would be the person to talk to about that. He's in the know about that. He always has some federation, to talk about, which is great, But my friend Bob and I watch WWE religiously just to cut. I watch it to cut it down, and now I watch it for Chris Jericho. I got really. That's for another show, but I got really offended with Vince. How he dealt with Roddy's death, and didn't even send flowers to Portland, didn't send anything to the Comedy Store for the memorial, although Stephanie and Triple H went and so did a bunch of other people to the funeral. Why? Because they had SmackDown tapings in Portland the next night. And Vince,
that's just bullshit.
He didn't go.
Do you think that could they have even done that first WrestleMania without Piper? You know, I mean,
nope.
He was a bigger thing than Hogan that year.
That's right. You know, and although they did have a love-hate relationship, they are selling a lot of his merchandise still, and the family, you know, is still getting a tidy sum each month. I mean, I just think that, you know, he should have shown some respect. And, you know, on one hand, I have to stick up for Vince, which might surprise you. He does take care of the old guys occasionally. That's unpublicized. That he does.
He's some of the ones who have badmouthed him.
But what he did with Roddy really turned me off to the product. Although I still watch it, I just don't look forward to watching it like I used to. And then when Dusty passed, it was Dusty this, Dusty that, Dusty this. Well, he did run NXT and everybody loved him. But, you know, I mean, when Vince needed ratings, who did he call? He called Roddy.
Yeah. Definitely.
And I'm on the
show. I look at those two as about, you know, equal names in this business. And, you know, I mean, I know Dusty's quite the legend. I love Dusty. But I look at Piper's, you know, right there at his level. So. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, the guy looks like he's had 7 litters of puppies. Yeah, right.
Well, Jeff, thanks a lot for letting me jump on the soapbox, interrupt you too many times. I've loved having you on the show. I have wanted you on, 2 years ago I asked you, you know? Yeah, I think it took about that long to get together. But, yeah, I'll definitely come back on again, and maybe we'll go to one of those hood plans and check it out. Hey, you could get a hold of me at Facebook. I would love to. We can meet up with Alan and door-to-door limousine service in a Ford Ranger pickup. Love it. Jeff, good. Yeah, we'll put that together soon. Gotcha, buddy. Jeff, thanks a lot. God bless you, and stay healthy, and give Cracker Snow Bunny a pet for me. I'll do that. Thanks for having me. Thank you, man. Have a good night. All right, take care. All right, buddy. Bye-bye. Bye. Folks, that's been Jeff Benson, J.R. Benson, and I apologize for interrupting. I don't really get that excited about a guest, but I have wanted to talk to this gentleman for so long, and I promise next show I won't be acting the way I did. Thank you for listening. Pipes, cue the pipes, pipes. Pipes. Cue the pipes, pipes. There we go. There are the pipes. I want to thank Matt Mann for his questions. I want to thank Bob from Bob's Radio Cafeteria. And we're going to the wrestling matches tomorrow night, Bob and me, and Alan Bolte for Kurt White's over-the-top rope 18-man battle royal, where a wrestler can do anything he thinks he's big enough to do. But really, folks, give a listen to Bob of Bob's Radio Cafeteria on YouTube. There's 20 great episodes of his unique film style, should I say. Bob's a great guy. And the Clarences. You get a chance, you see that name out there, the Clarences? Go see them. It's a great group. Bob and 2 sexy women are with him. Other than that, I want to thank, from the bottom of my heart, Jeff Benson. And this show will air next week. And it's been a wild ride. Golden showers and everything else. Remember, stand up to bullies. It's that easy. This has been a DERFCAST production. And I want to thank Max, the cat, the security guard, Cleo, who keeps everything together here, and Pipes, the engineer. Thank you, and remember again, folks, in this trying times, stand up for your rights and stand up to bullies. It's that easy. And next show will be PG, and I'll be back to my normal self. Good night.